Okay, so today we're going to replace the pads and grind the rotors on my 2015 Ford F-150 truck. I put new wheels and tires on it recently, and when I did, I realized that the pads were a little thin, so we're going to go ahead and take care of that. A couple things that are unique about a 2015. They do have an electronic braking system that if you don't disable it or put it into maintenance mode, it won't release to allow your caliper to compress. So we're going to go ahead and do that process. Also, we're going to do the front end first, take those, have those rotors ground, come back, do the rear end second. Okay, so these are some of the tools I think we're going to need. We're going to start off with jacking everything up. We've got some jack stands. We've got some, I've got two different jacks. I'm going to jack up both sides and put a jack stand into support. I've got some wheel chocks. Also have an impact wrench to help out with the loosening of the lugs, make that quicker. As far as other tools, we've got some breaker bars. I've got a caliper to compress the caliper when we're done. I do have a caliper compressing kit as well, which we may try, and then just various tools. And as we go through this, I will tell you which tool we're using for what and what millimeter and that type of thing. And to start off, it's a 21 millimeter to take the lug nuts off the front of the truck. So I'm going to go ahead and get the wheels chalked, get the jacks set up in place, and then we will take the front wheels off. So one of the things when you jack this up, we're actually going to do it on the frame rail, and right underneath the frame rail, they actually have a little arrow that shows you where to jack it up. So I've got the floor jack in place over there, and then now I'm going to place the factory jack on this side and get it pulled up just to where it touches the frame, right where the arrow is, and then I'm going to loosen up the bolts on the front wheels. One little trick you can do is if you have a drill and you have a 14 millimeter socket, you can actually hook in this piece that to lift up the jack, and you can actually put this on and then hold the jack, and that gets you easier into place so you don't have to keep spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line this up with the arrow right underneath the frame, and then I'm almost actually jacked up already, and I'll use this to bring it up the rest of the way. Normally I have a little DeWalt stubby wrench that I keep with me, but I let my daughter borrow it, and I haven't gotten it back yet. So the next thing I'm going to do is to break free the lug nuts, and that's a 21 millimeter socket. And the funny thing is all I had for the 21 is a short non-impact style wrench. My other ones don't go up this high in metric stuff, so I'm going to use a small breaker bar to break these free. Just get it to where they're loose enough to start off with, and now I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Now that I've got the lugs loosened up, I'm going to jack this up just enough to bring this tire off the ground where I can get it off. Now I place the jack stand underneath to make sure if there's something that this goes bad, it grabs on and we're safe. I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and take the lug nuts off the rest of the way. I'm just going to use my impact wrench to do it quickly. One thing with these Ford lug nuts is it's actually a lug nut that's covered by a little case. If you over torque those, they will start to no longer work. They go out around and they don't grab very well, so be careful when you do that. All right, so now we're going to take the wheel off, and if you can't tell already, I am sweating. It is hot and moist here in Georgia. This front rotor and pad system is actually a dual piston caliper. So what we're going to do first is we're going to actually take the caliper portion off first. Then we're going to remove the bracket and then the rotor so we can take that to get ground down. All right, so these caliper bolts are 14 millimeter. I thought they were 13, but they're actually 14. So let's get in there and get them. All right, so I got a wrench on here to make life easier. I just grabbed an adjustable wrench, and now we're going to break this one loose. I'm going to go down to the bottom now. So when I go to take the caliper off, I want to be able to kind of keep it in place, but have it out of the way a little bit. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll use an old piece of Romex that I have laying around and kind of put it on something that can kind of hold it and then fish it through. I've never done this break, so I'm not sure. One thing I do try to avoid twisting these lines and whatnot, so if I can kind of bring it up like that, then I can kind of set it over there where I can still get the bolt, the wrench in for the other pieces here. So let's see what kind of wear and tear we had on these. They're looking actually better than what I thought they were, maybe. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to remove the bolts that hold the caliper. That's right here and right here, if you can see those. And those are typically torqued down pretty heavily, so they're usually a pain to get off. You need to have a breaker bar usually for those, so we're gonna do that. And the nice thing about these is it is still a 21 millimeter socket, so the same socket you use to get the lug nuts off with. So we're gonna see if we can get this off without a whole lot of craziness. Okay, that one actually broke pretty nicely. Let's try this one. Okay, good on that one too. Yeah, it's very handy to have a large breaker bar. Definitely the additional leverage that it gives you improves things greatly. So there's your bracket that's come off. Going to throw this in a magnetic parts dish. And we've got that off. So now it's time to get the rotor came right off nicely, which is nice. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go on the other side. We're going to duplicate this. We're going to get these rotors taken in and turned. And then in the meantime, while the rotors are getting turned, what we're going to do is we're going to clean up some of this area here, clean up some of the brake caliper. We're going to compress the brake caliper and get everything ready to reassemble once the rotor comes back. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to open up the bleeder screw to let the fluid out as we compress the brake caliper. You don't have to do this in every situation, but especially if you have a Chevy truck, you need to. But I'm going to do it with the Ford anyway. Just be careful not to back up any of that pressure into the components. So I'm going to take a 3/8 inch screw, release this as I compress the caliper. Okay, we're going to release the bleeder screw a little bit as we compress. All right, so the bleeder screw on the other side was a 3/8 inch. This is actually a 10 millimeter, so this is different. This caliper looks newer, so I'm thinking that maybe at some point somebody replaced this. So we are going to release this bleeder screw just a touch here, and then we're going to compress the caliper. There we go. That one did not want to go. As we're preparing for the new calipers to go in with the new pads, one of the things we need to do is remove the old hardware on the brakes. So if you look here, you can see there's little clips here. These clips will actually just kind of pop out. What we want to do though is we want to replace those with the new pieces. So the new piece, you want to make sure which way that the old one was on, and then you want to put it on the same way. Pop it in. The new clip is in place on the bracket so that the caliper can slide in and the brake pads can go in. Good morning. Just got the rotors back last night. Took them to a O'Reilly Auto Parts to get the rotors turned, and they were 30 bucks a piece to have them turned, and then got back home and got rained out. So starting over fresh this morning, and now we're at the point where now that the rotors are ground, the calipers have been collapsed. We are going to put the rotor back onto to the axle here, and then put the caliper bracket back on before we can put the caliper back on. I'm gonna go ahead and put this on, get this lined up. All right, so I looked up the torque specs on these, and it's actually 184 pounds, which is very, very tight. So I figured it was gonna be about 150. So we're gonna get this in here and then get it torqued to specs. So now we will actually put our brake pads in. When you're putting the brake pads in, you're just basically lining them up into these slots and then just pushing them into place so they're not real difficult to do with that. All right, so now we're gonna put the caliper on. So we're gonna pull this piece of Romex out of the way here, and we're gonna make sure that the cable is not getting kinked in any way. So to show you which lines we're doing, or which bolts we're doing this, and also this one down here. The interesting piece with this one is that it's only torqued to 24 foot-pounds, which is strange because the other one is so tight, but I guess the bracket just really has to be tight, and the rotor's a little bit more, or not the rotor, but the caliper is a little more floating. So we're going to torque, we're going to have to use the additional wrench here. And it doesn't take much to torque that to 24 foot-pounds. So now we have this side done. So now what we're going to do, we're going to go over the other side. We're going to do the exact same thing. And then, because I let a little fluid out, I'm going to put a little fluid in. I'm going to press the brakes so that the calipers will actually pull in on the brake pad. I'll put the wheels and tires back on. Then we're going to move to the back and take off those so I can take those to the auto parts store to have the rotors. Okay, so now I'm going to start the truck up, and I'm going to push the brake pedal with my hand because I don't want to jump in it because it's on the jack stands, and make sure that I can get firm pedal. Okay, I've got firm pedal. Now I'm going to check the brake. And make sure that's good, and then we'll do the same thing to the back. Okay, as I put the wheels and tires back on, what I do is get it on. I've got my impact wrench set to the lowest setting so I can just snug them on. And then once I have them snugged, I'm going to tighten them in a star pattern and then torque it down to 145 foot-pounds. So just get those started. Impact wrench just makes it go a lot quicker, but you definitely want to make sure that the torque specs are correct, and also that you do everything in the star pattern. So now I'm going to take my torque wrench and set it to 145 pounds. All right, so we got the vehicle back down on the ground, so now we're going to go ahead and torque these to specs using a star pattern. All right, we are good. We're going to do the same thing on the other side, and then we'll be able to take it for a test drive and then bring it back in and do the back brakes. All right, so the test drive went well. So what I did is chock the wheels. I'm going to break loose the lugs on the back before we jack it up to take everything off. So this one we will have to disable the electric parking brake when we go to collapse the calipers, but we're going to wait on that. I'm going to try to get these off, get the rotors to the auto parts store so they can get ground and be back in time so I can get them all put on today and have it together. The rain kind of threw me off last night. So first thing I'm going to do, break the lug nuts free on each side. I'm going to jack it up, take off the wheels, and then we'll go through the same process that we did on the front, removing the rotors. Okay, so it's not a 14 on the back. Yep. So it's a 13 millimeter on the back. And so I'm going to go ahead and grab my 1/2-inch drive ratchet just because the bolts on this, they're not stubborn, but they're just kind of too snug in there to want to come out by hand. Okay, so we're going to try to put the parking brake into maintenance mode. So we're going to turn this to the app where it first kicks on. We're going to push on the parking brake. We're going to hold down the accelerator. We're going to turn it off. Then we're going to turn it back to app mode. You can hear it making funny noises. So I think, let me shut the doors here. Park brake maintenance mode. So we're in maintenance mode. Okay, so we're good. So basically, again, put it on app, press the parking brake in, hold down the accelerator, shut it off, turn it back into app mode one more time, and it goes into the maintenance mode. So now we are going to go compress the calipers. Okay, so before I used a C-clamp to compress the brake, I'm actually using a kit piece because it's actually going to work a lot easier in this one than just the C-clamp. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just barely crack this bleeder screw open as I do this. And the reason for that is I just don't like pushing all that fluid back up in there. I'm going to try this. Let's see if I can get it. Okay. So let me see. Be squeezing and tightening at the same time. Okay, so as I bottom that out, I feel like I got enough out of there. Okay, wipe that up. Make sure I got that good and tight. Spray a little brake cleaner on there. That way I can check it later, make sure I don't have any leaks. And then I'm going to undo this. All right, so that one is compressed. Now we are going to go to the other side and do the exact same thing. All right, so it's time for us to put the new brakes in. And on this bracket, as I was looking at it, I realized that I could have taken the rotor off without actually taking the bracket off because of the way the pads sit. It sits in there like that, but I think, you know, you could do it one of two ways. I think I'm glad that I took it out this way. I wasn't really paying close attention because I've got to replace these clips and the pads here. So I think that it's going to actually work better for me to have it sitting on my lap anyway. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull these pads out. And sometimes these can be a little bit more of a porker, the way the ones that have the little wings on them like that. Sometimes they can be a little more difficult, especially the one in the back to get out. And then I'm going to replace these clips. And before I put a new one on, I really want to look at the way they have that one on just to make sure that I'm putting it on correctly when I put it on. So I'm just going to kind of wiggle it out there. And then put the new one on. And sometimes these things can be a little bit of a porker going on. Just try to get it on without forcing it ridiculously, but still it takes some force sometimes to get it in there correctly. But the big thing is you just don't want to bend the new bracket or something because you're forcing it too hard. I think I'm going to get the rear pad in on this one as I bolt and then we'll see how well it works, but I think I want to put the rear pad in so that I'm not struggling with it while it's on there. Like this. And the bottom bracket, bolt. The only pain about taking this off, which you may want to consider before you do it, if you want to do it like that, I don't know if I would do it the same way again, I'd probably just leave it on. But torquing these bolts back in here is kind of unpleasant because you really got to put a lot of force on them. So that is probably one of the harder parts of doing the job, is actually getting the torque on these bolts. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and torque those to specs. Again, 184 foot-pounds, which is a lot. And then we'll put the rotor on, put the caliper on, and go from there. Okay, we're going to put this rotor on here. And that lines up with my brake pad that's back there. Now I'm going to put the additional brake pad on the front. So I want to line up, making sure it's going the correct way. Kind of get one started, so to speak, here. And get the other side. And then squeeze it together. All right, so we've got that. Now, the next piece of this is to put the caliper back on. So as I move the caliper over, I want to make sure that my lines are not twisted or funky in any way, shape, or form. I'm going to get those in and line these bolts up here. Try to get one in, get it started before I put that other wrench on it. All right, looks like got that one started. Get this upper one started. These are torqued to 24 foot-pounds. So I'm going to use my 3/8 ratchet torque wrench. It's funny because 24 pounds almost seems like not enough. Get this Romex out of here. So now this one is done. And we are going to basically duplicate this exact same thing on the other side. Put our wheels on, and then I will talk to you about the break-in procedure. All right, so we're going to take this out of maintenance mode, which is supposed to be the exact opposite as far as to put your key in, turn it to the accessory where it kicks on, push the accelerator to the floor, pull on the brake, shut it off, turn it back on. Nope. Hold on. Let me shut this door. All right, so let me shut it off. All right, so now I'm going to turn it on, turn it to the first one, push it down, pull on the brake, shut it off, turn it to the first one. Okay, so now it doesn't say maintenance mode anymore, so I'm going to start it up. So we're gonna try the break-in process, which is recommended by the manufacturer, of going 45 down to 10 5 times in a row, then from 35 down to 5 times in a row, and then they recommend that you don't stop because the brakes will be hot. They don't want you to cause them to adhere together, so they say then drive for at least 5 to 10 minutes without stopping or holding the brakes on consistently. That will give you some time to cool the brakes off. So here's number 1. 4. We'll let these brakes cool, and apparently that is how you break them in.